Hello, I'm Dan Bennett. I'm with Ollie Browning. We're going to run you through the latest Chelsea transfer news and rumours. Just some news before we came on. The big news today is that Thiago Silva signed a one-year contract extension with the club. Obviously, massively positive news given how many defenders could potentially be leaving the club in at the end of the season by the looks of things. But Thiago Silva is one that will be staying at least for next season anyway. But one central defender that's kind of looking at increasingly likely to leave, the sort of more we hear, is Antonio Rudiger. Sky Sports reporting today that Real Madrid, Bayern Munich and PSG are all in discussions with him. Although some sort of reports coming out just a few minutes before we came on that Real Madrid potentially might not be as interested or might have pulled out, but we're not sure how sort of accurate they are yet. We'll have to see how that one plays out. But certainly that was the report from Sky earlier, is that all those clubs were interested in him. I mean, the Daily Mail were reporting not too long ago that if he leaves, he's going to become one of the highest paid defenders in the world, Ollie. I mean, what's the kind of limit for Chelsea? How far should they be going to try and keep him at the club, do you think?
I mean, first of all, I'm very excited to hear that Real Madrid might pull out of any kind of attempts to sign him, because I think Chelsea have to be doing everything they can to keep him. Honestly, if it really is about the money that he wants, then I just think it's time to pay up. Like, he's undoubtedly, one of the most senior players at the club now. He's been incredible since Tuchel took over. So I just think we need to be doing everything we can to keep our most senior players, our best players, and just pay up. Like, the money that you spend giving him a new contract, surely you'd be spending that money on a transfer fee to get someone that is, as good or maybe not even as good as Rudiger is. I just think it's time to pay up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think obviously the report from the Mail was saying sort of around 400 grand a week, which is an insane amount of money, especially for a defender. You used to kind of seeing attacking players or like more creative players kind of get that money if they're good enough. But for a defensive player to get that, I think would be huge. I think they were saying they would pass De Ligt, which Juventus is on what the money that he's on. But I mean, you'd have to say probably Rudiger's as good a player as De Ligt, if not better. He's more experienced. So De Ligt's younger, which kind of gives him the edge. But I kind of agree with you. I think the money you'd spend replacing Rudiger, for a transfer fee, and then the wages you'd have to give the replacement, probably means it would be worth just trying to keep him there. Obviously, that's from Chelsea's perspective. If Rudiger really wants to leave and really wants to go, there's not really anything you can do to stop him because he's out of contract. But yeah, I mean, 400 grand a week is an insane amount of money. Though I think Chelsea would have to put some sort of limit on it. I'm not sure I'd go that far to keep him, but if they could give him a massive pay rise and try and still keep him at the club, but not maybe go as far as what the Mail was suggesting, I think that's something that they should definitely try and do.
I think kind of 400,000 pound a week. That's a lot of money. Like, that is, like you say, some of the best players in the world are not anywhere near, on anywhere near that kind of wage. And for a defender, does he have the kind of right to be asking for that much money? Probably not. But I don't know. I think you've got to be able to find a middle ground, surely, unless, like you say, he is just desperate to leave, which would be a bit strange considering, European champions. Are there many clubs better than Chelsea at the moment that he can go to? Maybe Real Madrid, sort of PSG, those are two clubs up there. But I just think, hopefully we can find a way to keep him.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, if he does go, it'd be a huge loss because he has been so good this season. Obviously, Andreas Christensen as well, sort of negotiations ongoing there. So we'll have to see how that one plays out, see if he stays at Chelsea beyond the summer, which hopefully he does. But another area of the defence, which has kind of proved a problem recently, is obviously at those wing-back spots. Ben Chilwell out for the season with his ACL injury. Reece James, think he's going to be out for a couple of months with the hamstring injury that he got. So they are looking really light in that area now. There's quite a few names that have been linked. I'll just run through them. Obviously, Lucas Digne at Everton. He's been suggested by quite a few sort of various reports as maybe one that Chelsea might be interested in, maybe some sort of short-term loan deal there, although I'm not sure how keen Everton would be to do that. Tutto Sport, I think that's how you say it, in Italy, claiming that Chelsea have contacted AC Milan about Theo Hernandez, about potential move there, though that would apparently cost at least £50 million if Chelsea were potentially going to do that. And also looking at Sergion Dest at Barcelona, according to the Daily Express, for around £30 million. There's a lot of options there, and I'm sure there'll be some more that we hear about in the sort of coming days and weeks. But out of all those options, Ollie, who kind of takes your fancy? Who would you prefer in out of the ones I've sort of mentioned?
I think you've got to look at Premier League experience and Lucas Digne as well. Obviously, probably going to have to be top of your list just because he's come from Everton, he knows the league well, and he's had a decent season on Merseyside. Like, I think you look at Chilwell, he's out for a long, long time. Putting money into that position for the rest of the season, I think it just makes sense. I think they need cover. Sort of watching Chelsea recently, the wing backs Alonso and Azpilicueta, when they play there, it's like you say, it's incredibly light. And against Liverpool, I was at the game on Sunday, and it just seemed like we lacked a lot of like attacking width that you normally get from Chilwell and James, and Alonso and Azpilicueta. They've been brilliant for the club for so many years, but they just don't offer the same kind of dynamic as Chilwell and James would. And the fact that they're both out kind of long term, you've got to be looking at replacements. And Theo Hernandez as well. That's another interesting one that I didn't realise until sort of, like you say, today, kind of the news coming out that Chelsea are potentially interested in him. It's another kind of player, player Chelsea love to get from the continent, and he's been decent for AC Milan this season. Scored a couple of goals in Serie A already. So I think of the names you mentioned, those two would be exciting. But then you kind of think more longer term, sort of after the summer. Would Hernandez be happy maybe sitting on the bench if Chilwell is going to be your number one for the next few years? Probably not. So it's a tough balance, I think.
Yeah, no, that was my issue with the Hernandez thing as well. I think if you look at that list of players, he's the best player on there. I think he'd be the most exciting addition, but £50 million is a serious investment. It's, they spent that on Chilwell, didn't they? So, and Chilwell was playing probably the best football of his career before he got injured and was looking really good. So I think if you're going to sign Hernandez, you'd have to sign him as the first choice left wing back going forward, which I don't think you could really commit to because, like I said, Chilwell's been so good, and I think he deserves to come back in when he's fit. So I think if you could get potentially a shorter term option, if you could get Digne on a short term loan deal, I think that would be the best option. Like you say, Premier League experience. I think he'd suit that wing back role as well. I think he's probably, he's obviously not in the Everton team at the moment. Kind of reports going around that him and sort of Rafa Benitez have had a bit of a disagreement. So that potentially gives Chelsea a bit more chance of getting him in, and it wouldn't require as much investment. I mean, yeah, the short-term loan deal that the Express suggested, I'm not sure if that, like, Everton would really want to do that, just because I think they'd at least want to get something back for him. I know they spent a fair bit on him when they got him from Barcelona. So, but he'd be the best one, even though he kind of probably is the most unexciting name on the list. I think he would be the one that fits best. Just before we leave, obviously I can't really go through this video without mentioning Romelu Lukaku, caught in a bit of a media storm over the last few days after his comments that he obviously wasn't too happy at Chelsea, and sort of praised up Inter Milan and hinted that he might want to go back there, or did say that he wants to go back there in the future. Some reports sort of linking him with and sort of early departure, which I guess was always going to happen. Gazzetta dello Sport in Italy claiming that he might even try and link up with Conte at Spurs, which would be quite something to see that. But Sky sort of in the last few minutes before we came on saying there's like zero chance of him leaving in the next two windows, certainly in January. Do you think that's like the only option really for him to stay? Because he's cost, 97.5 million. There's only a few clubs I can think that would really have that money to spend on him anyway. So do you think that's almost like the only option for him?
Absolutely. I think it would be an awful look for the club if they were to kind of move him on sort of within a year of spending, like a club record fee on him. And I think it's also kind of important to look at the context of the interview he's done. Obviously, it's caused like a massive, massive storm in the press, but you kind of look at the context of it, the timing, which I think it was done at least a few weeks ago when he was sort of coming back from injury, then he got COVID, so he wasn't playing anyway. Well, that's probably where a lot of the frustration has come from. And the fact that he did it with an outlet that is basically all about Inter Milan, you're obviously going to have to say nice things about Inter Milan. Otherwise, there's no point in doing the interview. So I think it's just important to look at the context behind it. But interestingly, I am also a big fan of Timo Werner, and I would love to see him kind of maybe in more kind of like hope and expectation at the moment, still kind of have a breakout season at Chelsea. So if you want to freeze Lukaku out, like it's from Tuchel's point of view, he's got the option of Werner, but then it's just basically the same squad he had last season that struggled at times. So yeah, I think it's it's got to be bringing back in from the cold and just kind of draw a line under it, you'd think, in the next few days, but you never know.
Yeah, I think the only option really is to get him back involved, when everything's calmed down, and just hope that, because he was playing well, when he did play. Obviously, he had all the injury problems this season, but he was scoring goals just before all this happened, which made the timing even worse that he came back in. And obviously against that, Aston Villa, who played really well, and it's just, makes the whole thing kind of worse. But I think the only option for Chelsea is to get him back involved when it's all calmed down. I just don't think, even if he wants to leave, Inter Milan, they had to sell him because they were in financial trouble. That's why, even though he wanted to stay, they had to sell him. So I don't think they're in a position at the moment to buy him back. And there's, very few clubs out there that would really want to pay that money for him anyway, especially, after what he's sort of come unsettled at Chelsea, not only a few months into his stay there, which is obviously not going to be that attractive to other clubs as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that one turns out. But I think certainly the fact that he's, report that he's not going to leave over the next 2 windows, I think makes sense for the club.